All right. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the newly constituted Standards Committee. I'm Andrew Vallance, Deputy Chief Exec, and the first order of business is to nominate the Chair of the committee. Do I have any proposals for Chair?
Can I propose Councillor Terry Byrne?
Okay, do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other nominations? No? In which case, Councillor Byrne is Chair of the committee.
Thank you. I'm honoured. Thank you very much. Right. Excuse me a moment while I get the agenda up on my machine. Right, first order of business. A little introduction to start with. As Andrew has already said, this is the first meeting of the Standards Committee since it's been split away from the Audit and Standards Committee. And what we'll be doing is looking at our performance against standards and how we've done, how many complaints we've had, how many code of conduct complaints we've had, and we'll be looking at how we performed in how many we've had and how we've dealt with them. So that's going to be the function. What I would like to say in introduction is I spent the weekend reading the Constitution because as you can imagine, standards is all about how we perform to our Constitution. And I would recommend to members, first of all, I'd recommend you don't read the whole thing. I had a very boring Saturday afternoon. It's my fault because I sat on the working party that amended the Constitution, but we have tried to make it as readable as possible and get rid of waffle and make it unambiguous, but I'm sure we failed in some areas. However, I would recommend all of you involved in any way with this committee to pay specific attention to, and Julie is about to tell me which pages.
Yes, so you need to go to part 3, where it says responsibility for functions, and it's the last 2 pages of that that section, which says about the Standards Committee and what the responsibilities and functions are.
And given that we're only meeting twice a year, it's probably as well to refresh yourself on those before each of the meetings. Fine, okay, we've done agenda item 1. Agenda item 2 is the election of the vice chair. Slightly strange in that the person we were expecting to be vice chair is not with us yet. I'm not too sure what the protocol is there, Julie. Okay, in that case, Julie has informed me it's perfectly reasonable for us to elect someone as vice chair in their absence. Oh, right. Would somebody like to propose somebody for vice chair? You're on again, Polly.
As he isn't here, is it okay to propose Councillor Mark Legg as Vice Chair?
Yes, Julie informs me that it is indeed. So you're formally proposing Councillor Mark Legg. Do I have a seconder?
No one else here, I'll second.
And I assume his election is unanimous. Anyone against Councillor Legg? I duly say again. Oh, yes, of course it is only members who can vote, yes. Anyway, Councillor Mark Legg is duly elected as Vice Chair of the Standards Committee. So, item 3, apologies and substitutes.
I've not received any apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Additional agenda items?
No, there's none.
Thank you. Disclosure of interest and dispensations. I feel I have to disclose I'm a member of Bexhill Town Council. That may become relevant in the future in standards complaints.
Just to clarify, Chair, you're referring to agenda item 6.
Oh,
yeah.
I am indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's to do with agenda item 6, yes?
Oh, fine.
Yeah.
Right. Agenda item 6.
Thank you, Chair, that's mine.
Wonderful, thank you. Please carry on.
Okay then, and there's a couple of things that I just wanted to say before I got onto the actual report, and the first one is because we only found out just before the agenda was published that there's been a change to the Parish and Town Council representative, and as you know, the Parish and Town Council representatives are nominated by the Association of Local Councils. So Parish Councillor Mrs Wendy Mears has been replaced by Parish Councillor Mark Griffiths from Guestling Parish Council. So I want to say a warm welcome to Councillor Griffiths. Through you, Chair, can I also invite the committee to place on record its appreciation and thanks to Councillor Mrs Wendy Mears, who served on Rother District Council Standards Committee since 2007, so obviously quite a long time, as a district councillor, and then more latterly as a parish and town council representative, and that was from 2011. So if you'd like to record your thanks for her contribution over the years, because she has been involved for a substantial number of years.
Fine, yes, the committee, I'm sure, would really like to endorse that comment, and thank you very much.
Thank you. The other couple of things I was just going to mention as well is that Suzanne Antrobus, who has been my deputy since February this year, she left the authority on Friday. She has a permanent job with Rochdale Council, and we're now joined by Petra Deman, who is now going to be my deputy monitoring officer, and she's observing this meeting. So I think we'd like to welcome her to the authority.
Welcome, welcome indeed, welcome.
Right. Now to move on to the report. This is the regular 6-monthly report that comes to the committee about code of conduct matters that we've been considering. And in the report you'll see there's a summary, and then there's also in the appendix more detail about each of the code of conduct complaints. You'll see that there has been 12 code of conduct complaints involving 1 district councillor and 10 parish councillors, and there's then a short summary of which ones have been upheld. So there's only 2 upheld, 1 was partially upheld, 6 were not upheld, 2 were dismissed at the triage stage, which I'll say a little bit about in a minute, and 1 was dismissed because the subject member resigned shortly after the complaint came in. I'm getting some feedback when I'm speaking. I don't know whether you can hear me okay.
No, it's fine here.
Is it all right? That's okay. It must be just my end. So there's a number of things that I wanted to highlight from the complaints. Certainly during this year, there's substantially fewer complaints than there was last year. We had 37 complaints in the previous year, and obviously we're down to 12. Obviously we were only partway through the year. There's still a few more months to go, but this is a marked difference. But we're still noting that the vast majority of the complaints are relating to parish councillors, and this was the case previously where, the number of complaints was far greater from the parishes. As you can see from this, there's only been one complaint involving a district councillor, so that's obviously very good. The other thing that I've referred to is matters being dismissed at the triage stage. Because of the number of complaints that we were having when I first joined the authority, we reviewed how we were dealing with them because they were very time intensive. And what we did is we introduced a few months ago a triage thing that, like when you go to the hospital, so you identify what the issue is against criteria, and rather than going through a long drawn out process, which we would normally do, we actually just cut to the chase, measure the complaint against, I suppose, all the criteria in one go, and then that helps us form an assessment as to what should happen with that case, whether it should then be formally assessed or whether it could be dismissed. And a number of the complaints we were finding could be dismissed because there were either repeat complaints that we'd already dealt with, or it was tit for tat, they were trivial or vexatious. So it does allow us to deal with them at a very early stage, and we have found that this has been working very well and very efficiently. So I wanted to highlight that for you. As part of our work, we've also been supporting the parish and town council clerks where they've been having difficulties with councillors. So there's been quite a lot of that. And then also I've mentioned the proposals from central government that they're looking at changes with regard to sort of code of conduct matters, and we'll obviously wait that with interest because, as you'll be aware, we've gone through various iterations of how code of conduct matters have been dealt with in the past, starting with the standards board, which was then abolished, and then the standard regime changing into something like it is now. We've obviously recently, in the last few years, had a new code of conduct as well. There's also comments that Angela Rain has made about a change in the law so that councillors will no longer have to publish their home address. We'd already had some government guidance to say that that wasn't necessary. In the past, it was only if it was a sensitive interest, but more and more we're finding that councillors don't want their address to be published. So, we're obviously accommodating that. So they're the main things that I wanted to highlight in that report. I don't know whether anybody's got any comments or questions.
Yes, please.
Yeah, well, just a general, got some feedback there. A general question. It's encouraging to see there are fewer complaints this year. And I understand that from parish councils, there's just a few councils that create a lot of complaints. I suppose it to be a wider area thing. So speaking from a route point of view, if there's anything we can do, we will. But the question is, do you see any trend in complaints from the wider area, not just from a few?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Oops, oh sorry. I can't hear. I don't know whether the microphone's on or not, but I can't hear.
Yeah, that was the end of my question. If we have a broader issue, then Route might be able to engage with it. But if it's just one or two councils, you're probably dealing with it already. So the question was, is it a generic problem or an isolated for a few councils problem?
It's yeah, we certainly have the certain.
Can you hear us now, Linda?
No, what happens is I hear some, then I can see the gentleman's lips moving, but I can't hear.
So can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay.
can hear now.
I finished my question. I'm going to turn the mic off and over to you.
Right. Okay then. Yeah, it is certain. We do seem to get more complaints from certain councils than others, and there's particular ones where we do experience a problem.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think from our point of view, we don't need to try and do anything as you're currently engaging those few councils who have had problems. So that's good to hear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are. We did put a lot of input into one in particular.
Morning, Linda. Just a quick question. You can ask councillors to go on training, but the powers you had didn't force them to go on training. You had to request that they go on it. With Angela Rayner, she's talking about giving more powers to yourself, I assume. So what would be the situation now if a councillor is found to have breached the code of conduct? Have you now got any more powers to enforce him to go on to the training or enforce him to do what you've asked?
Well, oops. Well, the only power that we've got is that it's actually an automatic breach of the code of conduct. If a councillor doesn't cooperate with the investigation and also does not comply with the sanction that's imposed, so it's an automatic breach. But if a councillor isn't cooperating, they're not going to be particularly bothered, by being in breach because of this. So, I mean, as we all know, that the difficulty that we have with the standards regime is that it doesn't have a lot of teeth, that we can impose sanctions, but if somebody won't comply, I mean, the limited sanctions anyway, but if somebody won't comply, then we can't force them to.
Okay, I'm under the impression now that the new government is actually going to bring in powers which gives you more power to enforce it.
Yeah, just we don't have them currently.
Okay, thank you.
Any more from any more? From our parish representatives? Sorry, Teresa, I've not quite got into looking at hands on the screen yet. Please go on.
That's okay. Mine is technical, not about content. There is something wrong between the external recording and what's going on in the chamber, because we're getting constant feedback, but also it appears that what is being said in the council chamber is happening twice.
Mm.
Oh dear, I'll ask if there's anything we can do about that. Thank you for giving us the feedback, Teresa.
I think that's why I was having the problem before, because I was then thinking the person was speaking, but I think I was seeing it the second time, so that's helpful to know. I wasn't going mad.
There's no obvious problem this end, so I think we probably have no alternative but to proceed anyway. But please interrupt if you're not getting a full picture of the meeting. Right, I think we can now move on to agenda item. Yes, of course. Yes, that report is for noting. And those in favour of noting that report, seconded by Councillor Biggs. You two played a good Batman and Robin this morning. Thank you, and that report is duly noted. Right, agenda item 7, and that's the government constitution on enabling remote attendance and proxy voting.
Yes,
That's
that's
you,
also fine at my item. It was just, I thought it was important for it to come to this committee because the government is going through a consultation process about both remote meetings and proxy voting. They're inviting members to respond individually. CMT has provided a response from an officer point of view, but I just wanted to draw this to members' attention and also ask the Standards Committee to consider it, and also whether they wanted to either just respond individually or whether they wanted a Standards Committee response to these proposals.
I'm not too sure. What's the feeling of the room on that? Do we want individual response or a response from committee? I would favour response from committee.
I'm just looking at this here. Obviously, Rob has already commented on it, Linda. When you look, they've already put their comments in blue. From a personal point of view, I don't agree with proxy voting from someone else. I don't think you should do that. That's just my personal rule, and I will say that.
Duly noted. Linda, comment on that? Councillor Thomas, didn't see your hand there. Please go on.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is an extremely important consultation document because it does set crucial policies for the government and policies which, if implemented on the local level, would have profound implications for the conduct of meetings. So this is something about which I feel that there should have been a much wider, much more inclusive debate before the council gave an opinion. This seems to me to be a matter for members, if you like, as well as officers, because it is members who are the people who put in the democratic input, and therefore changes in the manner and mode of that democratic input is very important. So I'm not very happy with the procedure that's been adopted. I certainly think it would be a good thing for there to be an extended debate about this amongst members, so we could all actually form an opinion on them. One or two of them do, as Councillor Lake just said, one or two of those things do cause me a degree of disquiet. And so, as I say, I would like to see a much wider debate rather than making a rather rushed response. I don't know how much time we've got before the deadline when these responses had to be in. Could we be told that, please?
I think it's the 19th of December, Richard.
Yeah.
So we have got time for a little bit more consideration.
Fine. I'll just take advice on that, Richard.
Okay.
Julie, how do you think we should move forward on that, given Councillor Thomas's comments? Linda, do you have any thoughts on a formal way forward, taking into account Councillor Thomas's comments?
Yeah, well, this is why I wanted to bring it to this committee, because although I was conscious that CMT had given a response from an officer's point of view, I did feel that members should also be able to comment. So, I mean, the choices are, obviously, as I said in the report, you can, in any case, comment individually, but if you wanted to do a response from the whole committee, then I suppose we probably need to have some sort of a meeting or email exchange between committee members so that a coordinated response can be provided. I mean, maybe the easiest thing is if members send their comments to me, and then I can put that together, send it out to you, and see if you're happy with that.
That would seem to be an excellent way forward. So can members and listeners please note that if they wish to look at this document in more detail and comment on it, then send their comments to Linda. She will distill those comments into a general statement, which will come back to this committee, and we can then take a view as to whether we all wish to endorse that as our committee response. Does that work, Linda?
Yeah, I think that does. And can I also say, if you can copy Petra, our deputy, in as well, just because I've got a period of holiday, we don't really want to waste any time, so we can, get on with that even while I'm on holiday.
Thanks for that. Any objections to that in the room? Any comments?
Terry, can I just say, thank you, Linda. I think you need a deadline, don't you? Because if the responses are due by the 19th of December, people need to get their comments to you in time for you to add it to your report and come back to us.
Well, what I would say is probably no later than the 16th, which is when I'll be back from holiday, and then I put that together and circulate it. It's going to be tight, but obviously I've got this week where I can, if you can get it to me as soon as possible, if you could get it to me this week, it would be even better, because then I can do it before I go on holiday. But if not, the very latest would be the 16th, to give me time to put it together, circulate it, and then get it off before the 19th.
Yes, please.
Hi, Linda. Quick question on the interpretation of the government proposals on proxy voting. This is relevant to parish councils, I think, more to hear, but it's important to understand your point of view. Proxy voting means, I think, that one councillor could be replaced by another councillor who could cast their vote at a meeting. Or could it mean that, say, one councillor can't attend, could they give their proxy vote to another councillor who would then have 2 votes? Is that potentially possible or not?
It is potentially, and that's why it's important to know how it's going to work. Sorry, that's why it's important to know how it's going to work. But yeah, potentially, if it's given to another councillor, they would have their vote and the proxy vote.
Thank you, because that's really important, I think, for parishes who don't tend to have committees most. And so you could end up, I guess, with one councillor having 3 or 4 votes in principle. Yeah, which would be a real problem. Thank you.
Thanks.
As a result of your comment, it strikes me that maybe it would be in order, when this committee and when all the responses are being collected and collated, for a statement to go from Rother District Council and from this committee to the parishes, with our interpretation of the position we think we're in. And if anyone then wishes to come back, but if we get this right, and if everyone has expressed their views, that should then enable parish councillors and parish clerks to essentially work from the same document across Rother. Is that satisfactory?
Yeah, that would be a great help. Thank you.
What I'll do, Julie, if Julie could circulate to members my email address and Petra's, because obviously you haven't sort of worked with Petra yet, so we'll make sure that you've got both of our email addresses to respond.
Thanks for that, Linda.
Thank you very much. That's very good.
Linda, obviously, we've got the parish council meetings coming up in December. The ones I've got 4 parish councils, so I will get them before the 19th. I will email the link that's on our screen at the moment. Is that the best thing to do, just to make sure they're aware?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
I think that concludes that report. Do we need to? Will someone propose the report for adoption? Seconded for adoption? Could be Councillor Biggs. Well, there's a surprise. The report is duly adopted with the caveats that have come up in debate, and the way forward with the general statements and individual statements to Linda. Right.
Okay.
Did someone call? No, Linda. Ah. Fine. Now, agenda item 8. Fine. You're going to take that one, Joe? Fine.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mark Adams is off sick today, so I'll take the report. It's Mark Adams's report, though. And a fairly standard format, I think, for those familiar with the committee when it was with audit. The local government ombudsman complaints, first of all, so those are ones that have gone through our own complaints process and landed with the ombudsman. There were 4 in the period from May to November, and 1 was upheld so that the council was found to be at fault in one of those 4, and 3 others were not investigated, principally because no material harm could be evidence to the complainant on the behalf of the ombudsman. So that complaint that was upheld by the ombudsman, we did take some learning from, and it was critical of our processes in terms of response times, so that team and responsible manager had been made aware and being made familiar again with the response timeframes and the importance of those response timeframes, principally for the quality of our service, obviously, but also in terms of resource management, and getting ahead of these things early tends to have less of an impact on resources. So an unfortunate one, that, and challenging that it's got to the ombudsman through our own complaints process without being upheld beforehand. Non-ombudsman complaints, we received 92 through our 2-stage complaints process, and those not familiar with the complaints process here, we receive a complaint and it's first of all triaged to ensure that it is a complaint and not a service failure, which means that it's not within the realms of our service promise to customers, as it were. So if it falls within those standards, we tend to treat it as a service failure. They first of all go to stage 1. That tends to be a phone call from a manager, just to be sure that of the complaint, be sure that we can't resolve it for them quickly, in terms of making sure that the complainant feels that their issue is resolved. It can then take a formal stage 1 complaint, which would be followed up with a letter or email, even if a phone call took place. If the complainant is still not happy and feels aggrieved, then it goes to stage 2, which is to a more senior manager, at which point, if they're still unhappy, they can be referred to the ombudsman. So we had 92 non-ombudsmen. Stage 1 was 42 complaints, of which 17 were resolved at that stage, 3 were upheld, and 22 were not upheld. Stage 2, there's also a helpful pie chart in the report around where those complaints fell, and you can see it's the old favourites, as it were, tend to dominate in planning and neighbourhood services, which includes our refuse collection service, and then a spattering of housing, revenue and benefits, and environmental health. Stage 2, which there were 8, 2 were upheld at stage 2, which again is frustrating that they weren't upheld at stage 1, because it does tend to have an impact on resources, and 6 were not upheld, and we assume were either left at that stage or taken further to the ombudsman. And there is a relationship between the 3 categories that I'm describing to you. So the 8 would have possibly proceeded from stage 1, of course. You'll see that 75% were planning and 25% were housing. Challenging with the housing service and the planning service, because we're often, with planning, we're often in the realms of subjectivity, and whether people are frustrated with the subjective decision of planners. With housing, often we're in the realms of trying to manage expectations about what a customer or a citizen, resident may reasonably expect when they're in housing difficulty, meeting what the resources and government legislation will do in those circumstances, which there is often an expectations gap to that extent. So that's Mark's report. I'm happy to take questions.
I've just got one, Joe. I've had a few same person, fair enough, Miss Bins, Miss Waste Bins, like, you know, and I've sent an email. Is that class as stage 1? Because it's been sorted quite quickly. The lady gets in touch with Biffa, but it happened a few times.
If it's persistent, they can complain. If it was about that bin being missed on that occasion, it would be treated as a service failure, and then someone would go out the next day and pick it up. If that failed and they didn't go out and pick it up, then they would be able to put in a formal complaint.
Yeah, what it is, it's a small lane. There's about 4 or 5 houses, and sometimes they get missed, they're put out, and they're missed, or they're not put back. So I normally get an email, which I then get in touch with the person concerned, and I normally get an email back straight away. But I just wonder if that stays at stage 1. When would it become a stage 2?
If a formal, so through our formal complaints process, if they were to log it as a complaint rather than raising a missed bin alert through the website or an email, and
normally come through to me.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a stage 1 complaint. No. That's a service failure. But look, if things are consistently being missed, it is challenging with the waste contract, because if they work in crews, so if the crew has been assigned, if they've missed a day and they've had to, it falls out of sync, the crew may not know about the lane. And, you know, these rural areas particularly, and it's similar in Hastings, I know from managing, working in and around there, but some of the Twittons and things, it's really, if they don't know, so they do get missed, yeah. And that we are aware, though, of those vulnerable areas, and they should, in fairness, they do often catch them, because they can see it on a screen in front of them, but it does happen.
I think maybe we need to summarise a bit about the purpose of this report. Yes, it's showing us the numbers of individual complaints, but as Standards Committee, we're looking at the way in which we have dealt with them. Is there a shortfall in the way in which we deal, the procedure that's triggered by these complaints? So there's that to look at. Another thing I think needs highlighting, when it says housing on here, everyone thinks, well, maybe not everyone, I certainly think, as ex-member for housing, of Southern Housing and other registered providers. The complaints here relate to us. Rother District Council has become a registered provider, and these are the complaints or the conditions that relate to the properties that we have elected to buy and use for temporary accommodation. So please don't think we're giving a blank cheque and saying everything's okay in housing, because it most certainly isn't. But that's another debate for another committee. Okay, any more questions about that report? Again, I'd make one comment. This is the first, obviously, meeting of the Standards Committee as presently constituted. And I think it will be useful in future reports to have a historic element in how, you know, are we better than last time, worse than last time? And that might throw up a few areas. Again, it shows us two things. One, it'll show us how our officers are responding in various service areas, just numerically, and that is of interest. But under the remit of this Standards Committee, we will be questioning, have we got the right procedure in place to deal with these and contain them? So a case in point, do we have a procedure for our waste contractor to inform us if crews are changing? If that does become a source of multiple complaints. But as yet, it would appear from Joe's report, we know what the problem is and it is currently contained. But, you know, let's look at this going forward. Make sure we look at it next time and see how we're doing. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Oh,
I'm going to propose it this time.
the Batman and Robin, or Batman and Robin with a Y of Rother. Moving on. Agenda item 9, and this one is indeed yours, Joe. No, we have.
Sorry, I should have messaged Catherine earlier.
There we go. We have Catherine. Welcome, Catherine. Good morning, and all yours.
Morning, everybody. So I'm presenting the results of our tenant satisfaction measure that we send out a survey to all of our tenants that are in the RDC owned accommodation.
Take your time.
So this year we did the surveys between the 1st of August and the 9th of September. The survey includes questions that are set out by the regulator of social housing. So they're predefined for us to ask them, and then sometimes we'll capture other aspects around, is someone signed up to my ROTHA? Is there any feedback in particular around, say, the resettlement programme that we also run? And the themes that the regulator of social housing want to capture are around keeping properties in good repair, maintaining building safety, engagement with the tenants and effective handling of complaints and responsible neighbourhood management. So we received no complaints throughout 1st of April 2023 to the 31st of March 2024, which was really, really pleasing to have. So that's complaints not associated with the whole housing department, but just around the housing that we operate. With the surveys, unfortunately, it was quite a low response rate, so 46 surveys were circulated, 19 were completed, so a 41% response rate. At the time, we had some transition around staffing, so the housing management officer we had left in July time, so we were recruiting for that. So there's probably less staff input than perhaps ordinarily we would like with some of this client group. Some of them have quite complex needs, and so therefore may have needed staff to help them fill it in. So that's something that we would like to look at improving for next year. Of the tenants that did respond, however, 100% were satisfied their property was well maintained, 100% felt they were treated fairly and with respect, and 100% felt they were listened to and kept updated. There was one dissatisfied response regarding delays on repairs, and this was in relation to something that we had to go through an insurance claim, which we very rarely have to do, but this was quite a significant issue that had happened with the property, and therefore we needed multiple quotes, which obviously delayed what we would normally have to do when we're getting those repairs completed. In relation to statutory compliance, this covers gas safety checks, electrical safety checks, portable appliance testing, Legionella checks, asbestos checks. When I wrote this report, as of the 31st of October, everything was up to date and satisfactory, and all housing management staff had had their training in Legionellas and asbestos, and then the new staff that will be coming in the new year, they will then go through that training process as well. We have done some improvements around monitoring fire safety and damp and mould, as many of you are aware, with the Grenville report and with the Social Housing Regulation Act, with Awab's law, that was around damp and mould. We've taken on a trial around some sensors and gateways in properties that can monitor the fire systems, any faults, carbon dioxide levels, humidity levels, which can help us look at, it distinguishes between environmental factors and structural factors, which means we can look if there is perhaps a bathroom that is more damp than we would expect. Is it something that's an issue with the building? Is there something that we can do? Is there a leak from a roof? Is the, do we need to repoint the bricks or something like that? Then we can identify that really early on before we get to the stage of having to deal with the mould. And this gateway collects all that data, and then there's also a case management system to monitor damp and mould cases as well. So we'll be much more efficient if we do get the cases coming through, that we are doing what we should be doing in relation to that. So recommendation was that the report be noted and the housing management team be congratulated on the results of the annual satisfactory survey.
Thank you. Do you wish to add anything, Joe?
Only to thank Catherine and the team. This is new territory for this council, who sold its housing stock in the 90s. And Catherine has been here with us for some years now and has experience previously of managing property, and especially with more vulnerable applicants who from our homelessness route, so who are doing a really, really great job and holding very high standards, going above and beyond what we're required to do when we have so few properties, which we have about 60 presently. But yeah, it's really reassuring and has been a real success. So just wanted to thank her and the team.
Excellent. In fact, you've echoed what I was going to say as well, because there was an almost imperceptible shift into becoming a registered provider, but that comes with it this whole heap of standards that you've got to conform to, and your team has taken that on really well. Not only are you performing well now, but I think it gives us confidence, should we wish to increase our housing stock in the future, working maybe closely with our own housing company, then we know we've got the capacity, well, we know we've got the procedures to do it, and that if we add to the team, we would have the capacity to keep our tenants happy. And as I say, keep our tenants a lot happier than some of the national registered providers. So I think a bit of a jewel in the crown in terms of Rother and the way we're managing our properties. So thank you for that very much. So,
Oh no, I just want to ask one question, if that's right, Chair.
Comment.
Item number 9, that is now live with the monitoring for the fire alarms and the mould.
Yes, the first installations went in August time. So we're in the early days of getting some of those readings back. And it has identified some cases where people have financially not been able to put heating on, and identified far more than we'd anticipated from identifying those. And the properties we've put them in initially are to do with those, the ones that have the former rough sleepers in, because they're the ones that needed the more tenancy sustainment support. So it was a way of showing them, because they can access the data as well, and we can talk through, well, you know, here, if you put your heating on and maintain it at this, it will take less than if you drop it to 13 degrees and have to boost it all the way up to 18. So there's an education process there with the tenants as well.
So that's a good snip it in the bud before it gets too bad.
Yeah.
Have we had anybody been with the fire alarms? Is there any issues with them at all, tampering or anything?
No tampering issues that we've had. We did have one fire in a kitchen in one of our general needs properties, and the fire system activated that. And this would allow us to look at, we can test them, we can see if the residents are testing them themselves, but it will also allow, when someone removes the head from it, it will identify that and it will send us alerts. So thankfully it hasn't happened, but we are confident that if it was an issue, that it would flag it to us. And we have a quarterly meeting with all the other local authorities across West and East and Mid Sussex, where we look at these, and there have been court cases where these devices have been used as evidence in those court cases for the councils to be successful in showing their attempts to amend issues there. So we're positive going forward.
Thank you. Sounds very good.
I'd like to echo that. Yes, I think we are working to what should be the national standard, and all too often isn't. And we're doing all that we can for, as you say, some of our tenants, merely because of the sort of property we're buying and the reason we're buying them. Those are, I was going to say, special needs. I'm never quite sure what the appropriate term is now, but those who need a lot of care and a lot of attention, and I hope we're managing as a council to provide them with suitable living accommodation, and I hope they feel supported. Thank you.
And the level we're going, so the standard that is set is for registered providers with 1,000 properties and more, but we're putting them in now so that we are still conforming to that. So, because why would it be a difference between 1,000 and 60 properties, and we can be confident that we meet those standards nationally. So thank you, everybody.
That's excellent. Thank you. Right. We note the proposal. we wish I'll do that again. Do we wish that proposal to be formally noted, that report to be formally noted? Councillor Gray, thank you. Councillor Biggs, there's a surprise. Thank you very much. Before we move on to our work programme, does anyone want to raise anything else? I'm looking particularly at our Nalcombe Parish representatives. I hope they feel that this committee is, you now see what the committee has been set up to do. I hope you feel we've got procedures in place to discharge those functions adequately, and that you'll get decent feedback from what we're doing. Also, we need a buy-in from the parishes to our standards, such that any complaints coming from parishes have already, if you like, been triaged by people who do understand what we're trying to do, what is and what isn't within our remit. So hopefully this is a good relationship going forward. Thank you. Right, item 10, agenda item 10, which is work programme. Do you want to comment, Julie? Spirit messages from my left.
Yes, Chair. I'd just like to confirm that this report will be coming back to the December meeting on the 2nd of December in 2025. Sorry, that was not put on the actual paper, so that will be coming back to this same meeting in a year's time.
Okay, that's good. Any other comments on the work programme? Councillor Gray.
Yes, I can confirm that the next meetings are at 10 o'clock. And they'll be held on a Tuesday. They're not on a Monday, they'll be on a Tuesday.
Fine. It looks like we have now completed our agenda, gentlemen and ladies, persons. So thank you for attending, and I shall now officially close the meeting. Thank you.